On this episode of Team Pilipinas, we drive up to Baguio City to check on the national kickboxing team. We head over to Bagak, Bataan, site of the future Philippine Sports Training Center.
Almost over 80 years since the national government created a complete sports complex.
We meet the people who keep our athletes in fighting shape behind the scenes.
And when they compete overseas, talagang not only medical ang role mo, you also become like a mentor to them.
And flip the history book back to the days of glory of one of the greatest Filipino athletes ever, 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐳𝐚𝐬.
If you're not nervous, you start committing mistakes. You'll be careless, and then you won't be really focused. So it's good to be nervous in sports.
Welcome to Team Pilipinas. I'm 𝐓𝐞𝐚𝐦 𝐏𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐩𝐢𝐧𝐚𝐬. We begin this episode with our national kickboxing team at Team 𝐓𝐞𝐚𝐦 headquarters in Benguet, where some of them have been lucky enough to train non-stop. Here's Dennis Principe.
Hello, my name is Dennis Principe and you are watching Team Pilipinas. Ang sport na kickboxing, it made its SEA Games debut noong 2019 at magbabalik ang sport na yan sa 2021 Vietnam Games. And mataas po expectations sa ating pong national team because maganda nga po ang naging performance sila noong 2019. And joining us to talk about the developments sa pagdating po sa kickboxing, head coach Mark Sangniao, gold medalist 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐷 Saclag, and ang kanilang bagong recruit na si Carlos Alvarez. Coach Mark, unahin na muna kita, no? Papalapit na yung SEA Games. Marami na nagpe-prepare for the upcoming SEA Games. Alam bang update natin dito sa SKP at yung mga batang ipanlalaban natin doon?
Yung magiging sistema natin ngayon, sa June and July, yun yung selection natin. So mapapalaro pa rin dito yung mga former natin, yung mga Philippine team, tsaka yung mga medalist natin. By the end of July, doon natin malalaman kung sino yung mapipili. Lahat makikilaro doon para sa SEA Games. So isasama dito pati mga hindi members ng Philippine team. Meron parang magiging sasama ng mga iba na makikipag-selection sa atin.
Okay, at matanong ko si 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐷. Hindi ko alam, parang gusto ata mag-walk out dahil gold medalist siya, dapat kasali siguro. Pero anong pakiramdam mo na ganon? Kahit na gold medalist ka, yun nga, kailangan pa rin dumaan sa kumbaga tryouts for the upcoming SEA Games.
Yes, sir. Mas mabuti po yun para mas ma-posible po yung training.
So wala ka reklamo para sa'yo, okay lang kung lahat-lahat kayo pantay-pantay mag-start?
Yes, sir. No problem po.
And I'm sure welcome yan kay Carlos because bagong salta lang sa SKP noong 2019. How do you welcome the challenge and the opportunity, Carlos, na ikaw merong equal chance na makapasok sa SEA Games?
Siyempre po, paghahandaan ko po ng mabuti para gagawin ko po yung best team sa elimination para ma-select po na magre-represent ng Pilipinas po sa SEA Games.
Coach, kwento mo nga kami dito about kay Carlos kasi sabi ko nga kanina kabisado na natin si 𝐏𝐸𝐷 kahit pa paano. Ano ba mayroon si Carlos para maging member ng national team?
Si Carlos, multi-medalist to sa BBL ng Wushu rin kasi naging varsity ko rin to kasi ng Wushu sa University of the Cordilleras. And sa lahat ng laro niya sa BBL, siya yung kumuha rin ng gold. Tapos naglaro rin siya ng mga competition dito sa dito sa Baguio tsaka Benguet na yung mga kickboxing, ayan, tapos Muay Thai. Nagpo-perform siya. Maganda yung mga performance niya. Halos nanalo siya. So, yun yung tapos nung may selection noon ng kickboxing, sabi ko sa try nyo. So, yun, pumunta sila kila 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐸 at yun, isa siya sa napili. And regarding naman sa kanyang attitude sa training, wala kang masasabi kasi consistent siya sa pag-training.
Okay, now 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐸, eto, sabi nga natin na multi-sport ito, no? Multi-medalist din, no? Kickboxing, tapos nag-wushu ka rin ata, tama ba? And then nag-professional, di ba? MMA, no? Bago nag-kickboxing. Pero I'm sure very memorable sa iyo ang kickboxing, ano? Noong 2019 dito ginawa sa atin. Paano naging special sa iyo na yun nga nakapag-gold ka dito pa sa atin, no? Tapos sa kickboxing kahit paano medyo gumagawa pa lang ng pangalan.
Special yun para sa akin, sir, kasi parang comeback ko yun sa national team. Kumbaga, umalis na ako ng national team dati sa wushu and then tinuloy ko ng MMA. Ayun, may sinabi ni coach magta-try out kami daw kami ng kickboxing dun sa Tagaytay. Thank God nakuha namin yung gold hanggang dumating kami sa SEA Games. At ang sarap manalo sa harap ng kababayan at sa mga pamilya, para iba yung pakiramdam kaysa yung ibang panalo mo sa ibang lugar.
Pero nung nasa Tagaytay ka, nandun ako, no? Coach, nakausap ko si 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐸, no? Parang medyo meron siyang, ang feeling ko lang nun, no? Dahil nag-usap tayo, may laban ka nun, no? MMA professional. So parang hindi mo pa alam kung papayagan ka, kung makakasali ka sa lineup, di ba? And apparently mukhang sinuportahan ka naman, ano? Especially ng isa sa mga coaching staff natin doon, si Randy Calua, kaibigan natin. Gaano ka-special sa iyo na, walang restrictions, sinusuportahan kayo, basta yung time ninyo sa kickboxing, may ninyo, yung ba nakatulong sa iyo para maging magandang preparations mo papunta sa pagpanalo ng gold?
Sir, kasi nung tinanong niyo pa ako about sa kickboxing, hindi pa ako sure kung nakuha po ako sa akong maglalaro sa SEA Games. Kaya sabi ko po, sigurado, mag-SEA Games po ako. Sobrang kaya ako nung malaman ko na sali pala ako sa SEA Games at sumuport din lahat ng teammate ko at si Coach Mark. Inayagin din kami maglaro sa kickboxing.
Punta tayo kay Coach. Coach, mukhang, sa napapansin ko mukhang magandang takbo ng NSA ninyo. No? Bukod sa mga magagandang lalaki, itong mga players natin, parang maganda yung nila, no? Disposition, no? Sa kanilang involvement sa SKP. Ano bang meron tayo at parang happy yung mga atleta natin?
Siguro nakuha rin natin to sa mga experience natin past. Maganda kasi yun yung kagandahan dito pag na-expose din tayo, ang dami nating matututunan and very supportive yung mga officials natin dito sa SKP. Very supportive plus yung mga atleta natin, ginagawa nila yung part na ang gandang teamwork siya talaga. So doon mo makikita na kaya masaya lahat. All happy, and siyempre kung all happy, ginagawa nyo lahat yung mga dapat nyong gawin, yung result magiging maganda. And hopefully magiging maganda ngayon. Pipilitin natin na mag-ensayo ng gusto yung mga bata, ihanda natin sila ng gusto para yung mga atleta natin para makakuha tayo ng magandang resulta. Praying na magandang resulta natin this coming SEA Games.
Alright, Coach Mark, maraming salamat sa iyo. Carlos and 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐸, good luck sa inyo at magkita-kita tayo dun sa pinakatuktok ng podium ng SEA Games.
Thank you very much. Salamat.
We head over to Bagak, Bataan, site of the future Philippine Sports Training Center.
almost over 80 years since the national government created a complete sports complex.
Bahagi na ng buhay nating mga Pilipino ang sports. Mula sa panahon ng unos, sa tamis ng tagumpay, sa kabila ng pagbabago ng buhay, ang Philippine Sports Commission ay patuloy na maglilingkod sa sambayanan at atletang Pilipino.
Last week, the provincial government of Bataan donated 25 hectares of land in Balanga for the future Philippine Sports Training Center. Thanks to a law signed by President Rodrigo Duterte in 2019, the Philippine Sports Commission will be able to build a new state-of-the-art home for the next generation of national sports heroes. Boyet Season spoke with National Training Director Mark Velasco.
Mark, welcome back to the program. Let me ask immediately our first question. Explain to us a new law that has been passed by Congress and has now been executory, so to speak. It's RA 11214. Can you explain that to us, please?
During February 2019, that is why 214. So February 14, RA 11214, this was signed into law by President Duterte. This law is establishing a sports complex known as Sports Training Center. And this is very significant because after Rizal, this complete sports training center is badly needed. During 2018, I think that time yung sports center doon sa Clark, I think was not finished or pa-start pa lang. So this was actually at that time a landmark law. And it's almost over 80 years since the national government created a complete sports complex. And this is also very significant to PSC because, as you know, the PSC does not own any land where the sports complex is. Now we have the Rizal Sports Complex, which the land is owned by the city government of Manila. We have the Phil Sports Complex. The actual area is vested to the Department of Education. And same goes with the Baguio Training Center. That whole area is actually under DepEd. So what the PSC is provided according to the law is that we manage the structures and the area wherein the PSC uses or utilizes for sports activity. So the one important provision in this law, Sir Boyet, is that the land has to be owned by PSC either by donation, acquisition, presidential grant. So this is the first time that the PSC would have its own land.
Talking about land, can you tell us eventually what parcel or what area of land has been eventually donated to you or been allocated for this purpose?
Actually, the area is in Balanga, Bataan, and it's actually situated in between towns. I think it's between Bagak, Balanga. So this is actually on a hilly area, so mataas siya. When our engineers visited the site, the area is windy, so hindi siya mainit. Even at this time, medyo windy siya. And in fact, it's very interesting because you can actually see the West Philippine Sea. Then behind you is the mountain. If you go to the east side, you will see the Freeport zone. I'm not sure if my geography is like, o basta on the west side, you will go down to the towns wherein nandun yung Las Casas, the resorts are there, the 𝐏𝐤𝐤. In fact, this land is actually donated by 𝐏𝐤𝐤 to the province of Bataan. And then Bataan donated it to PSC. So if you look at it, it has best of both worlds. If you go down 15 minutes, you have the Freeport. Go down 15 minutes, you have the resorts. An interesting fact is that Bataan would have a bridge from Cavite to Orion, which is actually around 15-20 minutes away. And also, it's also 15-20 minutes away from Mariveles, wherein we have the ferry from MOA, SM MOA, to Bataan, which only travels around 45 to 1 hour. So it is very strategic yung location.
Kasi nga, yung accessibility from Metro Manila and the other centers of population are very near, kumbaga, because of the infrastructure that's already ready, and then most especially by that time that it's completed, mas maganda na yung road networks natin, ano, Coach?
Yes, it will be and also hopefully by that time normal na yung situation. Imagine if you're an employee of the PSC, you live in Manila, you can actually go home. You'd be faster than traveling from Manila to Quezon City.
Oo, mas maganda nga naman yun. Coach, matanong ko lang, gaano kalaki? How much of a land area will the facility have?
According to the plot of the land, it's around 25 to a little over 25 hectares. So, but if deemed necessary, maybe we can request another little bit more land from the Bataan government kung medyo yung spacing ng training center would be insufficient. But if you can imagine the scale, the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex, it's touching around 9 hectares only. So if you look at the field sports, it's around 12 to 13. So if you look at the size, it's actually twice the field sports area.
Complex. Okay, talking about, we've already tackled the size. That being said, Coach, what sports, give us a general idea what sports would be accommodated at the complex?
Well, according to RA 11214, they put in around 39 sports. So that's from aquatics to athletics to archery to BMX. Of course, the martial arts are there. We have the baseball. We have the field sports. But according sa law, there is also a catch-all phrase naman eh. So if any other sports which is duly accredited and recognized NSA, the PSC, if the PSC would need it necessarily, they can put it they can utilize the PSTC. So merong catchphrase doon sa law.
Pagdating naman, Coach, sa number of athletes, officials, and staff, no, because the PSC will also have a satellite office there, I'm very sure. Gano'ng kadami tao more or less ang ma-accommodate niyan? Kasi you will also have people as in really living there, di ba? May mga talagang doon titira habang nagtitraining or habang nagtatrabaho siguro.
Yes, tama ka dyan, Boyet, no? I just have to compare what we have now and what we are looking at in the future. So right now we have almost 1,600 athletes. We have 2 sets of actually 3 dorms. We have in Rizal, Field Sports, and Baguio. In Rizal, we roughly have around 150 athletes who have a dorm. In field sports, around a little less than 100, and then the Baguio around 60 to 70. So if we take that that number, relatively konti lang talaga. At the moment, ang athletes natin would require dorm. But obviously, we are looking at the future. Bataan probably has less athletes that are from that area. So they might require a dormitory. So the dormitory must be studied, and this will come into the planning stage of this sports training center. Now we will have a master planning feasibility studies, and we will incorporate those factors once we will start the ball rolling.
Coach Mark, nabanggit mo na plano. No? You mentioned about plans. How much is the budget allocated for this? Can you give us an idea as to what would be the breakdown of this, and add to that the timetable? Ano yung magiging first priorities? For example, will it be the track oval that will be constructed first? Will it be the offices that will be constructed first? What's in the plan? And as far as the budget is concerned.
Okay, so the budget, according to law, is around 3.5 billion. Obviously, this would not be enough for all the sports facilities and amenities that is prescribed sa law. We assume this would be an initial layout of the budget. So sa 3.5 billion, we are looking at, we need to put in there the cost of the feasibility studies, the engineering and design work. So by practice, by industry standard, it is around 10% of the budget. So if you're looking 3.5 billion, we're around 300 to 350 million ang cost ng engineering and design works. I think that's how it is sa engineering. I'm not an expert. And even the feasibility study. So we will be requesting the DBM through our budgeting program, we will include there yung feasibility studies at saka yung design and engineering works. Now going to what structure that we are going to start. I'm not an expert. We actually have our engineering architect, but I can tell you, I think what is needed. Definitely, we will have an administration building. It may not be a building at the moment, maybe a small office area wherein we will start off a lot of our operations there. Definitely, we have the track oval because it's a universal structure wherein any sport can train and run there for their conditioning. We need to have an aquatics space wherein we have a swimming pool and I think the diving. And then I'm looking at multi-purpose halls, multiple level halls wherein different levels, any sport, indoor sport can utilize it. It might be 3 floors, 4 floors, depende na po yan sa engineering, what is the FAR regulations of Bataan. And obviously we have the dormitory and the sports medicine and training center, strength and conditioning center. So those were, for me, I'm not, but I think those 4 basic structures would probably be one of the first few structures that has to be created or built or constructed during that initial phase.
We meet the people who keep our athletes in fighting shape behind the scenes.
And when they compete overseas, talagang not only medical ang role mo, you also become like a mentor to them.
Bahagi na ng buhay nating mga Pilipino ang sports. Mula sa panahon ng unos, sa tamis ng tagumpay, sa kabila ng pagbabago ng buhay, ang Philippine Sports Commission ay patuloy na maglilingkod sa sambayanan at atletang Pilipino.
Welcome to Team Pilipinas. I'm 𝐓𝐞𝐚𝐦 𝐏𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐩𝐢𝐧𝐚𝐬. Attention and adulation stock athletes, especially those who make it to the podium. Now, we focus on the unsung heroes, the men and women who toil in the back room to make sure our athletes stay on track towards sporting glory. Today, we talk to Dr. Randolph Molo, the medical unit head of the PSC's Medical Scientific Athlete Services. Doc, can you tell us more about your work as the medical unit head of PSC's Medical Scientific Athlete Services?
Yeah, sure. I've been with PSC since 2006. I started out as a consultant orthopedic surgeon. And in a span of siguro mga 15 years, I headed ortho rehab. And then now I actually head the medical unit. Part of the things that we do for the medical unit is to take care of the athletes on a day-to-day basis. We see them regularly. In the past, we hold regular clinics Monday to Friday at both centers, Rizal Memorial at Philippines Sports. And then obviously the pandemic happened, we shifted to telemedicine. But other functions that we do is accompany the athletes for local and international games. On the organizational side, we also take part in organizing things like the PNG, Philippine National Games. And then on the educational side, we also do a lot of lectures all over the country when it comes to promoting sports science and sports medicine.
Doc, can you go down memory lane and share as to how you got started with the PSC?
My mentor, his name is Dr. 𝐓𝐞𝐚𝐦 𝐏𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐲. Actually, was the medical director before of Philippine Center for Sports Medicine. It used to be called PCSM. In time ni Chairman Ramirez, it actually was changed to PSI, Philippine Sports Institute. He asked me to help out with the national team. And syempre, I enjoyed. And obviously, giving service din naman is fulfilling.
Doc, is it safe to say that you're in a position that you once dreamed of?
Actually, it's in my high school yearbook to be a sports medicine surgeon and obviously to serve our nation then. So if you can combine both, I think I was able to really have that parang goal in mind way back then, and now I'm actually living it, and syempre it's enjoyable and fulfilling.
With your job at the PSC, you get to interact with athletes from different sports. What we want to know, who are the athletes that you had the chance to work with?
Actually, in the past so many years, medyo matagal-tagal na rin ako. So you're talking about 2005 SEA Games, all the way up until maybe the last major event I participated in was the 2018 Asian Games. So in that many years, you're talking about Lilas basketball team, you're talking about football teams, you're talking about individual athletes participating in Olympic qualifiers. Dati pinapasama kami to go with them as they are preparing for the Olympics. So you live with them, and when they compete overseas, talagang not only medical ang role mo, you also become like a mentor to them. You talk to them. You're an all-around person taking care of these athletes as well. Yeah, 𝐓𝐞𝐚𝐦 Muros, obviously, an icon. So actually operated on her. She had a sports injury to her Achilles before, so I did her surgery, and I think she's doing fine.
Doc, you've mentioned that you've been around since 2005. How was your exposure to various spectrums or fields of sports?
It's been changing over the years. People put a premium in care of the athlete, and over the years, I see it slowly improve. But there's been a big jump in improvement with the current leadership ni Chairman Ramirez, kasi he paid a particular emphasis on taking care of the doctors then and the medical staff. So you're talking about physical therapists, nurses, sports massage people, and really dumami rin yung working staff. And we see upgrades in equipment, we see upgrades in education or continuing education for us. And those things are a big help to our athletes when it comes to taking care of them.
As part of the MSAS, what are the challenges that your department faces? And now we're in a very delicate situation. How did the pandemic make it more difficult to function in your post?
Yeah, since early last year, I think March of last year, no, everything more or less shut down. So you can see across the board, very limited sports activities are being conducted. No? Right around July, we actually were the first to propose a template for returning sports gradually. But even like over a year later, piling-pili pa lang po yung mga pinapayagan sports na bumalik. So those are the big challenges for us. But we still have to follow what's going on in the environment and ensuring everyone's safety. But moving forward, while it's a challenge for us, I'm sure it's a bigger challenge for these athletes as they continue to prepare for big events like Olympics, SEA Games, Asian Games. So we just try to support them on our end. And we're being creative. We started teleconsults, tele-rehab, virtual sports psychology consults. So those are the new programs we're coming up with to supplement the services that we used to do face-to-face.
With COVID-19 still around, how does your department work with athletes preparing for the Olympics, and how will that look when they get to Tokyo?
Ang medyo kailangan talaga is a very good internet connection. That's the first thing we always will want. No? And basically, technology talaga has to work both ways. The athlete-patient has to have a good working knowledge kung paano siya makikipag-communicate. Kasi yun lang talaga ang means niya mag-reach out. So, but what we try to do is we're proactive on that end by asking our staff to actually check on these athletes almost on a regular basis. We do have a sports performance monitoring team doing this to keep tabs of all the NSAs and all the athletes in that roster. So yun talaga yung binago ng COVID for us. A limited hands-on time or face-to-face experiences, but I think in some ways it helps na we're actually more in touch with them pero virtually nga.
Will the same measures or procedures be implemented with athletes competing at the SEA Games in Hanoi?
Yes, this coming year, I think around November, SEA Games is lined up. And obviously, you know that there's always been a bigger delegation for the SEA Games compared to the Olympics. To be honest, right now, we're in the thick of the preparations for the Tokyo Olympics, which is like in less than 10 weeks. But as early as now also, you probably also know that we're preparing for training of the SEA Games athletes, which will be conducted in the Paris LG Youths. So, yun ang pinaprepara namin din ngayon.
Now let's move on to a much brighter side of things. What do you enjoy about your job at the PSC?
Obviously, when you work with athletes, ang satisfaction mo lang dyan is pasalamatan. So, we do get a lot of small gifts here and there, a few kind messages here and there. And doing sports is not difficult as a doctor, only because you enjoy what you do. And basically, if you're sports inclined like I am, the lifestyle is there. So hindi mahirap yung trabaho, ika nga. You show up at work thinking that it's partly play, but also you still do need to take a serious part in taking care of these athletes.
Doc, can you give me at least 3 key moments in your career as part of the PSC that you think money can't buy?
Sige. Marami, no? Actually, siguro, hindi ko makalimutan yung Gilas Puso game back, I think, in a qualifier in 2011 or sometime in the near past, na first time tayo pumasok sa qualifiers na papasok sa World Cup. So we were there on the sidelines. There's a lot of things that we experienced, and pagka yun yung nakakataba ng puso. MOA was packed. Everybody, you could see people crying in the stands even as that game was being played out. That's one of the highlights. Second is really marami in terms of experiencing our flag being raised on the first step ng podium. And we've seen a handful of athletes be part of it in the Asian Games. I think 2006, we had a few boxers in that unique position. And so talagang nothing compares to seeing the flag being raised, the national anthem being played, and you think at the back of your head na in a small way you contributed to a little bit of that.
Doc, how fulfilling is it for someone like you who works behind the scenes yet plays a vital role in the path to sporting glory of our national athletes?
Basically, when you see your athletes excel and indirectly or directly you handle them or you took care of them or you were a part in their overall preparation, yun na talaga yung gusto mo rin na pakiramdam that you can share silently with the athlete. Some of them actually do verbally thank us, but you know na marami rin sa kanila na when they see you outside, they will really recall the time that you helped them out. So that's also enjoyable on the part of what we do then.
Doc Molo, thank you for taking the time to be with us, and more power. Flip the history book back to the days of glory of one of the greatest Filipino athletes ever, 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐲 𝐏𝐤𝐤𝐿.
If you're not nervous, you start committing mistakes, you'll be careless, and then you won't be really focused. So it's good to be nervous in sport.
Bahagi na ng buhay nating mga Pilipino ang sports. Mula sa panahon ng unos, sa tamis ng tagumpay, sa kabila ng pagbabago ng buhay, ang Philippine Sports Commission ay patuloy na maglilingkod sa sambayanan at atletang Pilipino.
When you talk about the greatest Filipino athlete of all time, regardless of sport, 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐲 Nepomuceno is always mentioned. He has won everything there is to win on bowling, including 4 Guinness World Records and an unprecedented 4 Bowling World Cups. His image adorns the entrance of the International Bowling Museum and Hall of Fame in Arlington, Texas.
𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐲, it's nice to see you again. It's been a while.
Good morning, Bill. It's my pleasure to guest in your show.
Thanks. Let's go back to the very beginning. What was the cause of your initial attraction to bowling?
Let me tell you the story and how I got into bowling. My parents ran the clubhouse of UP Golf Course. UP had 2 golf courses at that time in the early 70s. And since the business of my dad was the restaurant portion of the golf course, my main sport at that time was golf. And one time there was this film golf tournament that the family went with my dad. And since I was a golfer, the day before his tournament, we were playing a round of golf in Camp John Hay, and it started to rain hard. We looked for shelter. It turned out to be the Mile High Bowling Center, 8 lanes, in boy spot at time. And I asked my dad what that game was, because what I knew of bowling before that was duck pins, the small balls. These are the big balls that was introduced, 10-pin bowling, by the Americans in the Philippines. So since we weren't able to push through with the game because it was raining so hard, we looked for a shelter, and since we could not push through, I asked my dad if we could try it. I got excited, although my first score was 63. So first lesson learned is that nobody's born to be a champion. I liked it because in golf at that time, sure we had June golf at Intramuros, but in bowling there was this weekly, what you call a league among the youth at the old Coronado Lanes, original Coronado Lanes. And my dad enrolled me because I really begged him to enroll me. And I enjoyed playing it, and I noticed that I became better at bowling much faster than golf. So that's, to answer your question, how I pursued bowling. Parang sandali lang, I started becoming the best in the youth club. After a while, after 2 years, best in the Philippines na among the youth. And then another 2 years, the best na among even the adults, national champion. So that's what made me pursue bowling, and siguro my success was a lot faster. Because in golf, I hardly won any trophies. If I won, chamba pa, or mas mahina yung kalaban. That's why I like bowling. My talent was there. I was lucky to discover it early.
When did you decide?
Right time, right sport.
Yeah. When did you decide that, you know, this is something that you wanted to be competitive at really, and not just for leisure?
Well, at 15, I still played golf. So another 3 more years. My dad, who's my coach, by the way, he encouraged me to play golf because he said that's good for. During that time, my dad was already looking at the mental side of sports, which is most not given importance by coaches. He saw that it would help my mental game if I still played golf together with bowling. So at 15, I devoted full-time in bowling. In the beginning, we were juggling it, keep it up, because it's good for your mental game. It teaches you patience, it teaches you focus, concentration. So I just followed.
Did you expect to be in bowling this long?
Well, tell you the truth, I took it step by step. I have a physical regimen that keeps me fit, so maybe that's why I'm still around. I feel I'm still competitive and I still play when I feel like it. So, and bowling is one sport that even if you're a bit matured, you can still play it. So, as long as I enjoy, I'll just continue. Although these days I'm a bit semi-retired now, but I still enjoy. From time to time, I still compete.
Let's talk a little bit about that physical regimen. Your dad once joked to me that napasobra ka ng kain or pakain siya sa'yo kaya lumaki ka ng gusto. When did this physical regimen start to take?
Yeah, I'm proud to say that I'm one of the first athletes that believed in cross-training. Actually, my dad believed in cross-training through his consultations with the experts at that time. And during my teenage years, I did weights and I did road work for stamina, because bowling also requires stamina with those 16-pounders that you swing and roll. And that's where the running came into place, where it helped me. And then weights naman, since you're using different muscle groups in the sport, we strengthened the areas that needed to be supported. Like in bowling, it's important to have good legs, strength, shoulders, arms, and that's where the weights came in. And I did it all year round. Of course, resting about 2 days a week, but I continued it up to this day, my physical regimen.
Okay.
I would do weights, and then now, although I don't run anymore, it's cycling. It's less jarring on the knees.
Okay.
Because in bowling, once your knees give up, wala na. You're like any other sport. It's game over. I'm lucky that I have good, strong legs, although I had wrist injury. I was operated already because of wear and tear. I was able to come back despite of losing flexibility in my wrist.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the World Cups and the Guinness records, because that's what people around the world know you most for. When did you first think about the World Cup?
Well, the Philippines hosted the 1975 Bowling World Cup at Astro Bowl Magallanes, and I was 18. That's my first time that Bowling World Cup, kasi you have to be a national champion. You just don't go there and join. You have to be the best among the men, and then you have to be, if you're a girl, among the women. So I joined the national elimination for the Bowling World Cup when I was 18, and I came in second to 𝐓𝐞𝐚𝐦 𝐏𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐸. If I had won at that time, I would have played my first World Cup in the Philippines. But unfortunately, I came in second. The following year, I joined the eliminations, and it was a good year because I was the national champion of the Philippine Bowling Congress, Philippine Open, and then I won the eliminations for the World Cup, and I won the Asian Championships all in the same year, parang Grand Slam. It's the first time that someone achieved the rare Grand Slam in bowling. So that was the turning point in my career when I got to represent the country at 19 at the Bowling World Cup held in Tehran, Iran. And at that time, Iran was really modern. It's like being in Europe. So that was the turning point when I went as a student, first year college, to Iran. And of course, as an underdog, it was my first exposure to world tournaments. And I was happy and lucky to have won it.
Have you ever been
19
nervous?
and still youngest up to this day. My records are all intact.
Wow. Were you ever nervous? Have you ever been nervous?
Of course, in sports, it's okay to be nervous. It's not good to be not nervous. Because once you are not nervous, sports kasi tinitimpla yan eh. Parang you have to feel nervous, but it should be under control. And that's when everything, parang it's a turning point that it brings you, powers you to bring out the best in you. If you're not nervous, you start committing mistakes. You'll be careless, and then you won't be really focused. So it's good to be nervous in sports, but kailangan under control.
And that's this week's episode of Team Pilipinas. I'm 𝐏𝐤𝐥𝐢𝐥𝐢𝐩𝐢𝐧𝐚𝐬. Thanks to 𝐓𝐿 Lodge Design Hotel for their support for the team in Baguio City. Join us every Saturday at 4 p.m. only here on PTV para sa bayan. And always remember, we are all on the same team. We are all Team Pilipinas. See you next week.